The ship was dying. Kirath knew it as surely as she knew the rhythm of her own heartbeat. She could hear it in the tortured groan of its aging hull. She could feel it in the freezing air creeping through the empty corridors. She could see it in the flickering lights that grew weaker with every passing day. The medical frigate Valen's Grace had once been a symbol of hope. It had crossed countless battlefields, carrying wounded soldiers away from death. Its doctors had saved thousands of lives, and wherever it appeared, desperate crews believed they still had a chance. Now, it drifted helplessly through the core expanse. Like a corpse, floating across an endless black ocean. Alone on the bridge, Kirath stared into the silent darkness beyond the cracked view screen. Her iridescent wings, once strong enough to carry her effortlessly through the skies of her homeworld, hung broken against her back. 3 weeks earlier, during the attack, they had shielded a wounded child from falling debris. The child had survived. Her wings had not. The bones will heal, the ship's doctors had promised. But there were no doctors left to keep that promise. Only silence, only memories, only her. Far below, old Tovash struggled to keep the failing engines alive with whatever spare parts he could salvage. Elsewhere aboard the dying vessel, 11 wounded crew members slept inside stasis pods, suspended between life and death, while the ship searched for a miracle that would never come. Everyone else was gone. Kirath closed her eyes, remembering the day everything fell apart. The emergency alarm had echoed through every deck. The faster-than-light drive had suffered catastrophic failure. Within minutes, Valen's Grace had become stranded inside the core expanse. A region of dead space so empty that even smugglers refused to cross it. There were no trade routes, no colonies, no patrols, no one to hear a distress call. Fleet Command had run the calculations. Rescue ships would require months to reach them. The frigate had enough power for only 12 days. The evacuation order had come soon afterward. Every operational shuttle had carried away as many survivors as possible. There had not been enough seats, not enough fuel, not enough time. Someone had to remain behind with the wounded. Kirath never hesitated. She volunteered before anyone else could speak. Now, 3 weeks later, the last emergency batteries were almost exhausted. The life support systems were failing. The engines were dying. And somewhere beyond the endless darkness, no one knew they were still alive. Then, a single light appeared on the sensor display. One contact, unknown, approaching. Kirath stared at the screen, hardly daring to breathe. After weeks of absolute silence, something had finally found them. The fuel for the evacuation pods was limited. A choice had to be made. The able-bodied crew would leave. The wounded would stay. Kira could still see the faces of her colleagues as they climbed into the escape pods. Some of them cried. Some of them refused to look at her. The captain had clasped her shoulder and told her she was brave to volunteer to stay behind. Brave. That was not the word Kira would have used. Stupid, perhaps. Stubborn. Unable to accept that 11 people should die alone in the dark, Torvash had stayed too. The old Gren engineer had simply refused to leave his engine room. His people were made of something like living stone, and Torvash was as immovable as a mountain. When the evacuation officer ordered him to leave, he had laughed. "I have lived 80 years, he had said. "I will not spend my last days running from death. If the ship dies, I die with it. That is how it should be." So, they stayed. The two of them keeping the ship alive for 11 sleeping souls who would never know the sacrifice being made for them. Kira checked the life support readings again. The numbers were bad. They had been bad yesterday, and they were worse today. The oxygen recyclers were failing. The power cells were draining. Every system on the ship was slowly shutting down, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. She sent another distress signal into the void. She had done this every hour for 3 weeks. The message went out into the darkness, and the darkness swallowed it whole. No response ever came. The door behind her opened and Torvash walked in. His heavy footsteps echoed through the empty bridge. He carried 2 cups of something hot. Kira did not know what it was. They had run out of proper food a week ago. "You should rest," Torvash said. His voice was deep and rough like grinding rocks. "I cannot rest. The signals will still be there when you wake up. What if someone responds while I am sleeping?" Torvash set the cup down beside her. Steam rose from the dark liquid inside. "No one is responding, little one. You know this." Kira did know. She had known for 2 weeks now. The Salvani Concorded had written them off. In the official records, they were already listed as lost in action. Their families had been notified. Memorial services had been held. To the rest of the galaxy, they were already dead. "How much time do we have?" she asked. Tvash was quiet for a long moment. 6 days, perhaps 7, if I can squeeze more power from the secondary cells. The stasis pods will stay running. Those 11 will sleep peacefully until the end, but the air for us will run out before then. 6 days. Kira stared at the view screen. Stars glittered in the darkness like cold jewels. Somewhere out there, life continued. Ships flew through space. People laughed and worked and lived. And here in this forgotten corner of the universe, 2 people sat waiting to die. "I do not regret staying," Torvash said suddenly. Kira looked at him. His stone face was hard to read, but she had learned to see the emotions hiding in the cracks. Right now, she saw peace. Why not? Because leaving would have been wrong. Those 11 people trusted us to care for them. Abandoning them would have been a betrayal of everything, I believe. He took a long drink from his cup. "My people have a saying, a life lived without honor is no life at all. If I had left, I would have survived, but I would not have been able to live with myself." Kira understood. It was why she had stayed too. She could not have climbed into that escape pod knowing that 11 people were being left behind to die alone. The math made sense. The logic was sound, but something deeper than logic had kept her feet planted on the deck. "I just wish I could have done more," she whispered. "You have done everything possible. Sometimes that is all we can offer." They sat together in silence. The ship groaned around them. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Somewhere in the distance, a pipe rattled as the heating system struggled to keep working. Kira turned back to her console. She would send another distress signal. It was pointless, but it gave her something to do, something to hold on to in the endless dark. Her fingers moved across the controls. The signal went out. She waited for the familiar silence. The console beeped. Kira froze. That was new. In 3 weeks, the console had never beeped back. She stared at the screen, convinced she was imagining things. But no, there it was. A signal, faint and strange, coming from the edge of sensor range. Tovash, the old engineer, was at her side in an instant. They watched together as the signal grew stronger. It was not a Salvani frequency. It was not CH either. It was not anything Kira had ever seen before. The communication system crackled to life. A voice came through. It was rough and alien, speaking words that her translator struggled to understand. The language was strange. The accent was stranger. But slowly, painfully, the translator began to make sense of it. "Unknown vessel. This is the UES Perseverance. We are reading your distress beacon. Hold tight. We are coming to get you." Kira's blood ran cold. She knew that designation. UES, United Earth Ship. The species identifier flashed on her screen, tagged with warnings and intelligence flags that she had only seen in classified briefings. "Human, that is impossible," Torvash breathed. "Humans do not come to this region. They were banned from compact space, but the signal was real. The ship was real, and it was getting closer." Kira had heard the stories about humans. Everyone had. They were a young species, barely a few centuries into space travel. They had been rejected from the Galactic Compact for their dangerous behavior. They refused to follow protocols. They started wars over nothing. They were unpredictable and violent and utterly without reason. And now one of their ships was coming toward her. She did not know whether to feel hope or terror. "What do we do?" she asked. Torvash was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a strange sound, rough and tired, and somehow full of wonder. "We wait," he said, "and we see what happens next." The stars continued to glitter in the darkness, but for the first time in 3 weeks, Kira felt something she had forgotten existed. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she was not going to die out here. After all, the human ship was ugly. That was the first thing Kira noticed when it appeared on the view screen. The Salvani built their vessels with grace and elegance. The Kree designed theirs for maximum intimidation. But this ship, this Perseverance, looked like it had been welded together from scrap metal and stubborn hope. It was covered in patches and repairs. Scorch marks darkened its hull where weapons had struck it in past battles. The paint was faded and worn. Nothing about it matched. The engines looked like they had been replaced multiple times with whatever parts were available. And yet it flew against all logic and good engineering. It flew. "They are hailing us," Torvash said. Kira's hands shook as she opened the channel. The screen flickered, and then she saw a human for the first time. The creature was smaller than she expected, soft-looking with no armor plates or claws or any of the natural weapons that most species carried. Its skin was a warm brown color lined with creases that Kira's database told her indicated age. Gray streaks ran through dark hair that was pulled back from its face. Its eyes were steady and calm. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the UES Perseverance," the human said. "We picked up your distress beacon 4 days ago. We have been pushing hard to reach you. What is your status 4 days?" They had been coming for 4 days. Kira did not know what to say. She had sent that beacon expecting nothing, hoping for nothing, and now this strange alien was looking at her with what appeared to be genuine concern. "Our life support is failing," Kira managed. "We have 11 wounded crew members in stasis. Our oxygen will run out in 6 days, perhaps less." The human nodded. Her face remained calm, but something flickered in her eyes. Determination, perhaps, or anger at a situation she had not created but intended to fix. "We are going to dock with your vessel," Vasquez said. "We have medical personnel and engineers standing by. With your permission, we will come aboard and render assistance." With her permission, the human was asking for permission to help them. "Yes," Kira said. "Yes, please." The next hour passed in a blur. The Perseverance maneuvered alongside the dying Valen's Grace with surprising skill. The docking clamps connected, the airlock sealed, and then the door opened. Kira had expected soldiers. She had expected weapons pointed at her face and demands for information. Every briefing she had ever read about humans said they were aggressive and violent, quick to attack and slow to trust. Instead, a medical team walked through the airlock. They wore simple uniforms with patches showing crossed medical symbols. Their hands were visible and empty, and at the front walked another human, younger than the captain, with kind eyes behind thin frames of glass. "I am Dr. Marcus Chen," he said. His voice was soft and gentle. "We are here to help. May we examine your wounded?" Kira led them to the medical bay. She watched as the humans moved among the stasis pods, scanning each one with equipment she did not recognize. They spoke to each other in low voices, sharing information and making notes. Nobody touched anything without asking first. Nobody made any demands. More humans arrived. Engineers this time carrying tools and equipment. They headed for the engine room where Tivash waited. Kira heard their voices echoing through the corridors as they assessed the damage. Captain Vasquez came aboard last. She was shorter than Kira had expected, barely reaching Kira's shoulder. But she moved with the confidence of someone who had faced worse situations and survived them. "Your ship took heavy damage," Vasquez said, looking around the corridor. "What happened?" "We were attacked by Kree forces while evacuating wounded from a border skirmish. Our faster-than-light drive was destroyed." Command ordered an evacuation. Kira paused. The wounded could not be moved, so they were left behind. Vasquez's expression shifted. It was subtle, but Kira saw something hard enter her eyes. "Your own people left them." The mathematics were clear. The rescue ships could not arrive in time. The logical choice was to save those who could be saved. The logical choice. Vasquez repeated the words like they tasted bitter. "And you stayed anyway. Someone had to." The human captain looked at her for a long moment. Then she smiled, and the hardness in her eyes softened into something warmer. "We have a saying where I come from. No one gets left behind. It sounds like you believe something similar." From the engine room, Kira heard Torvash's booming laugh. She had not heard him laugh like that in weeks. When she went to investigate, she found the old Gren surrounded by human engineers. They were crawling through conduits that Torvs had declared beyond repair, pulling out damaged components and replacing them with new ones. "Impossible," Torvash was saying. "That coupling cannot hold. The stress will tear it apart in hours." A young human engineer grinned up at him from inside the conduit. "Good thing we have lots of backup couplings. Then we will just replace it when it breaks." "That is insane. That is engineering." Torvos looked at Kira with wonder on his stone face. "These creatures are mad. They do not build things properly. They just build them to break and then fix them again. It should not work. It should not work at all." He paused. "And yet, the oxygen recyclers are coming back online." He was right. Kira could feel it. The air was already easier to breathe. The cold that had crept through the ship was retreating. The lights were growing brighter. She found Dr. Chen in the medical bay, examining her damaged wings. His touch was gentle as he assessed the injury. "The bones are healing well," he said, "but the muscle tissue has scarred badly. You will regain movement, but full flight may be difficult. I am sorry. I cannot do more. Selvani physiology is not my specialty. You have done more than anyone else." Kira said quietly. "That is not enough. But I will keep studying. Perhaps we can find a way to help the muscles regenerate properly." He looked at her, then really looked, and something in his gaze made Kira want to cry. "How are you doing? Not your wings. You, how are you holding up?" No one had asked her that. In 3 weeks of slowly dying, no one had thought to ask how she was feeling. She was supposed to be the caretaker, the one who kept everything running. Her own needs did not matter. The tears came before she could stop them. They ran down her face in silver streams, and she could not make them stop. Dr. Chen did not try to make her stop. He simply handed her a clean cloth and waited. "It is all right," he said. "You have been very brave. You are allowed to be tired now." That night, Kira sat on the bridge with Captain Vasquez. The human had brought something called coffee, a dark, bitter drink that Kira found strangely pleasant. They watched the stars together as the ship slowly came back to life around them. "Why did you come?" Kira asked. "Your people were banned from compact space. You had no reason to help us. You had every reason to stay away." Vasquez took a long sip of her coffee. "We were surveying the expanse, mapping routes that no one else bothers with. When we picked up your beacon, there was no question about what to do, but you could have ignored it. The risk to your crew, the political consequences. There is no calculation for this." Vasquez said simply, "You were dying. We could help, so we came." Kira shook her head. "My people would never do this. The Concorded operates on logic and mutual benefit. Resources are not spent without return." "Then what do you want in return? What payment do humans expect for this rescue?" Vasquez looked at her with an expression Kira could not read. For a moment, the human seemed almost offended, then her face softened into something like sadness. "We want you to live," she said. "That is it. That is the whole thing." Kira did not understand. She could not understand. Everything she knew about the universe told her that this should not be happening. Help did not come without strings. Kindness was not given freely. The galaxy was cold and logical, and survival depended on calculations. But the humans were here. They were fixing her ship. They were healing her wounded. And they wanted nothing in return except for her to survive. Maybe everything she knew about the universe was wrong. 2 days passed. The Valon's grace was still broken, but it was no longer dying. The humans had worked miracles with their strange equipment and stranger methods. Life support was stable. The wounded in stasis were safe. There was food and water and warmth. Kira found herself smiling for the first time in weeks. The Perseverance had attached to cables to her ship. They were moving slowly toward the edge of the core expanse, where Solani patrol routes might pick them up. It would take another week to reach safety. But for the first time, safety seemed possible. Torvash spent his days with the human engineers. He complained constantly about their methods, but Kira noticed he was also taking notes. The humans built things differently than any species she knew. They planned for failure. They expected things to break. And so they designed everything to be fixed quickly and easily. "It is wasteful," Torvash grumbled one evening. "All those spare parts, all that redundancy. Proper engineering means building something that will not break. Does proper engineering work when you are stranded in dead space with no support?" Kira asked. Torvash was quiet for a long moment. "No," he admitted finally. "It does not." Dr. Chen visited Kira every day to check on her wings. The muscles were healing better than expected. He had found a treatment in the human medical database that was helping the tissue regenerate. It was experimental, he warned her. Designed for human muscles, not Solani ones. But it was working. She was starting to feel hope. Real hope. Not the desperate denial she had clung to in those dark weeks alone, but genuine belief that she might survive this, that all of them might survive. And then the sensors detected the approaching ships. Kira was on the bridge when the alarm sounded. Captain Vasquez was there within seconds, her calm face hardening into something sharp and focused. "Report," she ordered. The officer at the sensor station looked up with fear in his eyes. 3 ships on intercept course. Kree Dominion signatures. Destroyer class. The Kree. Kira's blood went cold. She knew why they were here. The border skirmish that had crippled the Valen's Grace had not been a random attack. The Kree had targeted a medical frigate on purpose. They had committed a war crime, and the wounded sleeping in stasis below were witnesses. The Seraph did not leave witnesses. "Time to intercept," Vasquez asked. 4 hours at current speed. Vasquez nodded slowly. She looked at the view screen where 3 points of light were growing steadily brighter. 3 destroyers against 1 battered exploration cruiser. The math was simple. The math was brutal. There was no way to win this fight. Kira knew what would happen next. She had seen it before. The Perseverance would cut the tow cables and run. It was the logical choice. The humans would survive. She and Torvash and the 11 sleeping crew members would die. But at least someone would make it out alive. She steeled herself for the order. She told herself she understood. She had already made peace with death once. She could do it again. "Battle stations," Vasquez said. Kira blinked. "What? You heard me. All hands to battle stations. I want weapons hot and shields at maximum." Vasquez turned to look at her. "We are not leaving you, Captain. You cannot win this fight. 3 destroyers against 1 ship. The odds are, I know the odds." Vasquez's voice was steady. "I have been doing this a long time. I know exactly what we are facing." "Then why?" The human captain smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had made a hard choice and found peace with it. "Because leaving is not who we are." The next 4 hours were the longest of Kira's life. She watched the CF ships grow closer on the sensors. She watched the humans prepare for battle. They moved with calm efficiency, checking weapons and running diagnostics and making sure every system was ready. Nobody talked about retreat. Nobody suggested cutting the tow cables. When Kira offered to release them from their obligation, to tell them it was acceptable to save themselves, they looked at her like she had spoken in a foreign language. "You are under our protection now," Sergeant Yusef Okonkwo told her. He was the chief of security, a massive human with dark skin and a shaved head. His hands were the size of dinner plates, and his eyes held the quiet confidence of a warrior. "That means something to us. But why? We are strangers. We are not your people." Okono considered the question. "My grandmother used to tell me a story. She said that a long time ago, when humans still lived only on Earth, our ancestors learned that survival depends on helping each other. The ones who abandoned their tribe did not last long. The ones who stayed and fought even when the odds were bad. Those were the ones who built civilizations. That was thousands of years ago. Surely things have changed. Some things do not change." He placed a hand on her shoulder, gentle despite its size. "We look after our own, and right now you are our own." The Kree commander hailed them when his ships were within weapons range. His name was Overseer Vray, and his face filled the view screen with cold amusement. He was tall and angular, with scales that glittered like black metal. "Human vessel," he said, "I am surprised to see your kind so far from home. You are in compact space. You are not welcome here." "Neither are you," Vasquez replied. "This is neutral territory. You have no authority here. I have 3 destroyers. That is all the authority I need." Vray's eyes moved to Kira standing at the edge of the frame. "I see you have guests. Hand over the Svani ship and its crew, and we will let you leave in peace. And if we refuse—" Vray laughed. It was an ugly sound full of contempt. "Then you will die with them. A foolish choice for creatures not your own. They are from a government that rejected your kind. Why would you protect them?" Vasquez leaned forward slightly. Her voice was calm, but Kira heard the steel beneath the words. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez, of the United Earth ship Perseverance. These people are under our protection. If you want them, you come through us." The Kree overseer stared at her in disbelief. "You would die for them? For strangers?" "Yeah, we would." Silence stretched between the 2 ships. Vray seemed to be waiting for something. Some sign that the humans were bluffing, that they would see reason and surrender. But Vasquez's face did not change. Her crew did not waver. They stood at their stations, ready to fight and die for people they had known for 2 days. Kira felt tears forming in her eyes again. Not from fear this time, from something else. Something she did not have a name for. "Very well," Vray said finally. "Then you will die with them. What a waste." The screen went dark. "All hands," Vasquez announced over the ship's communication system. "This is the captain. We are about to engage 3 Kree destroyers. I will not lie to you. The odds are not good, but we are not going to abandon the people counting on us. We are going to fight, and we are going to give them hell." A cheer rose from the crew. Kira heard it echoing through the corridors, rising from every station and every deck. These humans were facing almost certain death, and they were cheering. They really were insane. The first weapons fire lit up the darkness of space. The Kree had begun their attack, and against all logic, against all reason, the Perseverance turned to meet them. The battle began with fire. Kree weapons tore through the void, blazing lines of green energy that lit up the darkness like angry stars. The Perseverance shook as the first volley struck its shields. Alarms screamed, sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and somewhere in the chaos, Kira heard humans laughing. She could not understand it. They were under attack by 3 warships. They were outgunned and outmatched, and they were laughing. "Hard to port," Vasquez commanded. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Give me firing solutions on the lead destroyer. Let us show them what we can do." The Perseverance moved. It should not have been able to move that fast, Kira thought. The ship was old and battered and held together with patches. But it twisted through space with a dancer's grace, spinning away from the Kree weapons and bringing its own guns to bear. Human weapons were different from anything Kira had seen. Salvani ships used precise energy beams. Kree vessels fired concentrated plasma bursts, but the humans used projectiles. Massive chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds, smashing into their targets with brutal force. The lead crest destroyer staggered as the barrage struck home. Its shields flickered and died. A second volley tore into its hull, ripping through armor that had been designed to withstand energy weapons. "Direct hit," the weapons officer reported. "Target is venting atmosphere. They are pulling back. 1 down, 2 to go." But the remaining destroyers were learning. They spread apart, attacking from different angles, forcing the Perseverance to divide its attention. The human ship could not be everywhere at once. Hits started landing. Shields began to fail. Kira watched it all from the bridge, feeling helpless. She was a medical officer, not a warrior. She had no skills that could help in this fight. All she could do was watch as the humans fought and bled and refused to give up. The ship shuddered again. A damage report flashed across the screen. Hull breach on Deck 4. Fire suppression activated on Deck 7. Power fluctuations in the engineering section. Boarding parties inbound. Sergeant Okonkwo's voice crackled over the communication system. Kree troops are cutting through the hull on Deck 3. I am moving to intercept. Vasquez nodded grimly. Stop them. Whatever it takes. Yes, Captain. Kira had heard stories about human soldiers. The intelligence briefings described them as relentless, capable of fighting through injuries that would disable other species. She had assumed these reports were exaggerated. Propaganda designed to make humans seem more dangerous than they really were. She was wrong. The security feeds showed what happened when Kree boarding troops met human defenders. The Kree were larger, stronger, covered in natural armor that could turn aside most weapons. They expected easy prey. They found something else entirely. Okono led the defense personally. He moved through the corridors like a force of nature, his weapon blazing. When a Kree soldier knocked the gun from his hands, he drew a knife and kept fighting. When the knife broke against Kree armor, he used his bare hands. The humans did not fight like any species Kira had ever seen. They did not calculate risk. They did not retreat when wounded. They kept coming and coming. Driven by something that had no name in the Svanni language, Torvash appeared at her side, his stone face pale. "I have seen many battles," he said quietly. "I have never seen anything like this. How is this possible? I do not know. They should be dead. By every measure I understand. They should all be dead by now." He shook his head slowly. "But they keep fighting for us, for strangers." In the medical bay, another miracle was happening. Kira saw it on the security feed. Dr. Chen was operating on a wounded human crew member, while the ship shook apart around him. His hands were steady. His focus was complete. When a Kree soldier burst through the door, he did not run. The gentle doctor, the one who had asked how she was feeling, picked up a surgical tool and killed the Kree before it could raise its weapon. Then he turned back to his patient and continued the operation as if nothing had happened. Vital signs stabilizing. He reported over the comm, "Patient will survive." The battle raged on. The Perseverance destroyed the second Kree destroyer, but the cost was terrible. Fires burned through multiple decks. The hull was riddled with breaches. Systems were failing one by one. Captain Vasquez took a piece of shrapnel to her shoulder, but refused to leave the bridge. "We can still win this," she said through gritted teeth, as Dr. Chen patched her wound. "We just have to hold on, Captain." "The ship cannot take much more," her first officer warned. "Then we take less. Rue power from non-essential systems. Strip the crew quarters if you have to. I want everything we have going to weapons and shields and life support." Vasquez smiled grimly. "We can hold our breath if we have to." It was insane. The whole thing was insane, but somehow impossibly it was working. The third CRT destroyer was taking heavy damage. Its weapons fire was becoming less accurate. It was trying to retreat. Then the Perseverance's main power coupling failed. The lights went out. The artificial gravity flickered. For a terrible moment, the ship went dark and silent, drifting helplessly in the void. "Report," Vasquez demanded. "Main power is down. We are on emergency reserves only. Weapons are offline." The officer's voice cracked. "Captain, we cannot continue the fight." Silence fell over the bridge. Kira felt her hope die. They had come so close. They had fought so hard. But in the end, the mathematics had won. One ship could not defeat three, and then the sensors beeped. New contacts were appearing at the edge of the system. Multiple ships, large ones, moving fast. The identification signatures came through, and Kira felt her heart skip a beat. Salvani, a full battle group, 5 warships emerging from faster-than-light travel, weapons already hot. "This is Admiral Korath of the Salvani Concord. Dot. A voice announced over open channels. All vessels stand down. We are responding to a distress call from the human vessel Perseverance." The Kree destroyer, suddenly outnumbered, turned and fled. It jumped to faster-than-light speed and vanished into the void, leaving debris and destruction behind. It was over. Kira's legs gave out. She slid to the floor of the bridge, tears streaming down her face. They were saved. Against all odds. Against all reason, they were saved. Vasquez was being helped into a seat by her crew. Blood soaked through the bandage on her shoulder. Her face was pale and drawn, but she was smiling. "Told you we just had to hold out," she said weakly. Kira crawled to her side. "You almost died. Your whole crew almost died. For us, almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades," Vasquez replied. Kira's translator could not parse that phrase at all. She did not care. She took the human's hand in her own and held it tight. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you. Do not thank me yet. We still have a lot of repairs to do." Vasquez looked around at her battered bridge, her wounded crew, her broken ship. Did everyone make it? The first officer checked the reports. All crew accounted for 17 wounded, 3 critical, no fatalities. No fatalities. After a battle against 3 destroyers with boarding parties and hull breaches and fires, no fatalities. "The wounded from the Valen's Grace?" Vasquez asked. "Stasis pods are intact. All 11 patients are stable." Vasquez closed her eyes and let out a long breath. "Good. That is good." Torvash stood at the edge of the bridge looking at the humans with something like awe on his stone face. "Blessed and insane," he murmured. "Completely blessed and insane." For once, Kira could not disagree. 3 weeks later, Kira stood before the Salvani High Council. The chamber was vast and ancient, built from crystal that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. The 12 members of the council sat in a curved row above her, their faces unreadable behind masks of formal ceremony. This was the heart of the Concordant, where the fate of billions was decided through logic and calculation. Kira should not have been here. Junior medical officers did not address the High Council. But she had demanded this audience, and the story of the Perseverance had spread too far to ignore. People across the Concordant were asking questions. They wanted to know about the humans who had come from nowhere to save those that their own government had abandoned. The questions had become uncomfortable. The council needed answers. They thought Kira would give them what they wanted: intelligence about human tactics, analysis of their technology, weaknesses that could be exploited. They were wrong. "You have been brought here to share your observations about the human species," the lead counselor began. Her voice echoed through the crystal chamber. "The Concordat has limited information about these creatures. Your experience is valuable." "I understand," Kira said. "Tell us about their military capabilities, their weapons, their tactics, their command structure." Kira took a deep breath. "I cannot do that." The council stirred. This was not the response they expected. "Explain yourself," the lead counselor demanded. "You are asking the wrong questions. You want to know how to use humans, how to control them, how to turn their violence to our advantage, but you are missing the point entirely. And what point is that?" Kira looked up at the 12 faces watching her. These were the leaders of her civilization, the wisest and most logical minds in the Concordat. They had built an empire that spanned 1,000 worlds, all through careful calculation and rational decision-making. And in the Corinth expanse, all of that had meant nothing. The human ship Perseverance was outgunned and outmatched. She began 3 Kree destroyers against 1 exploration cruiser. The mathematics were clear. They could not win. Their captain knew this. Her crew knew this. Any rational analysis would have told them to cut their losses and flee. Yet, they did not flee. No, they did not. Kira felt her voice growing stronger. When Overseer Vray offered them safe passage in exchange for surrendering us, Captain Vasquez refused. When he asked if they would really die for strangers, for people from a government that had rejected them, she said yes, and she meant it. The council was silent. Kira continued. The CH expected the humans to break. Every species in the galaxy would have broken. The logic demanded it, but the humans kept fighting. They took damage that should have destroyed them. They suffered wounds that should have killed them, and they would not stop. She remembered the battle, the fire, the blood. Dr. Chen operating with explosions, shaking the walls around him. Sergeant Okonkwo fighting hand-to-hand with Kree soldiers. Captain Vasquez commanding from the bridge with shrapnel in her shoulder. "You want to know what makes humans dangerous?" Kira said, "It is not their weapons. It is not their ships. Other species have better technology. What makes humans dangerous is that they do not calculate. All species calculate." The lead counselor said, "It is the basis of survival. Humans calculate differently. They do not weigh lives against resources. They do not measure the value of strangers against the cost of helping them. They see someone dying and they help. They see someone abandoned and they refuse to look away. They were told they were not welcome in the compact, and they still came when we called. She let that sink in. The Kree did not retreat because they were outgunned. The battle was turning in their favor. They retreated because they finally understood what they were fighting, a species that would choose death before abandonment, a species that could not be predicted or controlled because their choices came from somewhere beyond logic. You are describing irrationality. One of the counselors said, madness. I am describing love. Kira replied, I am describing loyalty. I am describing everything that our civilization has calculated out of existence. In the name of efficiency, she stepped forward, looking each counselor in the eye. You abandoned us. 11 wounded crew members and 2 volunteers left to die in the void because the mathematics demanded it. Our own people wrote us off as acceptable losses. We were already dead in your records while we were still breathing. The mathematics were clear, the lead counselor said, but her voice was less certain now. The mathematics were cowardice, wearing a mask of logic. The humans did not have better mathematics. They just refused to accept the answer they were given. The chamber fell silent. Crystal scattered light across the floor in patterns that seemed to shift and change. Kira stood her ground. I am not here to help you exploit humans. I am here to tell you that we need to change. Not them. Us. The lead counselor leaned forward. What are you proposing? Bring them into the compact. Give them a seat at the table. Let them teach us what they know about loyalty and sacrifice and refusing to abandon each other. They are dangerous, unpredictable. Yes, thank the stars for that. Kira's voice softened. When I was dying in the dark, I did not need predictable allies. I needed someone who would come for me even when it did not make sense. The humans were that someone. Maybe we should ask ourselves why we were not. The debate lasted for hours, then for days, then for months. Kira gave testimony to endless committees. She answered the same questions over and over again. She told her story until her voice was, and her memory ached from revisiting those terrible weeks. But slowly, opinions began to shift. Other voices joined hers. Torvash spoke of human engineering, of their stubborn refusal to accept that anything was truly broken. The 11 recovered patients spoke of waking up in human care. Surrounded by kindness they had not expected, Admiral Kurith spoke of arriving at the battle site and finding a crippled human ship still fighting, still protecting its charges, refusing to give up even when all hope was lost. The vote happened on a cold morning in the Crystal Chamber. The Svani Concordat formally requested humanity's admission to the Galactic Compact. It was contentious. Many species still considered humans too dangerous, too irrational, too alien in their values. The debate raged across 100 worlds. The Selvani representative made the final argument. We have spent thousands of years building a civilization based on logic, efficiency, and mutual benefit, she said, and in the Korath expanse, all of that meant nothing. Our wounded were dying, and we left them to die because the mathematics demanded it. Then the humans came, the humans we rejected for being illogical, and they did what we could not. They stayed. She paused, letting her words echo through the chamber. We call them dangerous because they do not calculate mercy. Perhaps that is exactly the danger this galaxy needs. The vote passed on a rebuilt Perseverance. Now officially welcomed into compact space, Captain Elena Vasquez received the news. Her crew cheered. The ship that had nearly died in the void was whole again, patched and repaired, and ready for whatever came next. Vasquez smiled. Then she turned back to her console. Helm, set course for the next survey sector. We have work to do already, her first officer asked. We just got permission to enter compact space. We could take shore leave. Celebrate a little. We can celebrate later. Right now, there are people out there who might need help. Vasquez looked out at the stars, steady and calm, as she had been throughout everything. That is what we do. That is who we are. The Perseverance turned toward the unknown. Engines humming with renewed life. There were always more people to save. And somewhere in the crystal halls of the Salvani homeworld, Kira Veith watched the ship depart. Her wings were healing. Her scars were fading, but she would never forget the lesson she had learned in the dark. The universe was not cold and logical. Sometimes, against all odds, someone came to save you. Sometimes the silence was broken by a voice that refused to let you die alone, and that made all the difference.